I think we can definitely agree that the last 60 days, I think it's 60 days now, perhaps it's slightly more, slightly less, I don't know, the days seem to have blurred into one. They've definitely been a very, very different experience. I don't think that any of us would have thought that we would have seen this situation in our lifetimes, but yet we have. We've been in our homes, many of us, for the last 60 days, and the whole world has kind of pushed pause. But in actual fact, in many, many industries, including the food industry, who've been continuing as an essential service provider, there has been a lot of change, operational changes in order to deal with the potential cross-infection of staff, of course, but also changes with regards to the way that we do our business. Many, many companies have had to make arrangements overnight for staff to work at home, remote connections, virtual meetings. I think we've all had to learn how to play with either Zoom or Microsoft Teams or GoToMeeting or whichever tool that it is that you're using. And I think the latest phrase that is trending on Twitter at the moment is, "Can you hear me? Can you hear me?" Because that's what we've had to say in many, many virtual meetings. And I'm sure that the pandemic will eventually come to an end and normality will return, but we have to ask ourselves, what will the new normal look like? And I'm convinced that technology is going to play an even bigger role in our lives as we go forward after COVID-19. And this is exactly the space where CISPRO come in. Digital transformation is the name of their game. And really today we're going to be chatting about how this will and can impact on the food industry going forward, and how we should be looking for opportunities to engage with technology, because I think we've realized the many benefits that it offers us in this last 60 days and how we should be preparing to go forward. And so at this point, I'd love to introduce to you Dedre Fryer. Dedre is the head of solutions at CISPRO Africa. And is that not just the coolest title? If you bring Dedre a problem, she will have a solution. I just thought that was so cool, Dedre, that they've given you that title. She focuses on the needs and the trends of CISPRO's customers and the industries that they operate in. She's really spent a lot of time in software licensing, support, ERP projects. She's even managed the CISPRO Academy. She also understands that businesses are constantly changing, and I think today's topic and this situation we find ourselves in definitely confronts business with a huge amount of change. But it's her passion to stay informed on the trends, engaging with customers to help them understand their evolving needs and opportunities, and I think that's why Dedre is such a great speaker today. In her spare time, and I'm sure she's been doing a bit of working from home, so maybe she's been able to sneak in some time to read a good book, and I'm sure she's been helping her daughters explore and discover the adventures that life has to offer. So welcome, Dedre, and thank you so much for your time again. It was great having you on a webinar previously, and I'm really looking forward to what you can share with us today. It's all over to you.
Great, thanks Linda, and hi everyone. I just want to start off and say thanks once again. Always great to be on a food focused webinar. Always great to share and engage and collaborate. So thanks once again for the opportunity. Big chuckle at your mention of my title. If you think the title's cool, you should try the job. Definitely lots of fun. We get to just really experience some unnormal things, but then also make things normal. And it's always great to be in that situation and just see how we can add value and change. And change is definitely one of those things we're busy going through at the moment. I think in this world of COVID, a world that no one really actually thought we would see ourselves in, we definitely are experiencing life in a different way. And in some ways in a good way, because it's helping us to rethink and reinvent and relook, and also just digest. And so today's topic, I think, becomes quite relevant and pertinent because for a long time, we've been talking about digital transformation, and it's been talked about in many circles, many businesses. You can't walk into most IT projects and not have the term come up. It gets talked about at conferences and events to the point that people are actually just even sick of it. And even though it was talked about for so long, it was still, I think, kind of not trusted or understood fully, or comprehended 100% to the point that, it was also just ignored in some circles. And then we see our world today, and I think, one outcome of what we're busy going through across the world in a COVID world is suddenly digital transformation, I think, makes sense. Suddenly people are starting to understand the importance of it, or starting to understand the need for it. And so because of that, it's suddenly become a reignited topic. It's suddenly a topic that people are paying attention to and wanting to explore, because we've really been put into a situation where we've no longer got a choice. We have to survive as individuals, and we have to survive as businesses, and we have to find a way to carry on and function in a normal way going into the future in this scenario with this epidemic that we are currently in. And one of the best ways, or the easiest ways to do this, is with the usage of technology. And so therefore digital transformation becomes a really, really big conversation and a really important focus area. So that being said, we are going to talk a little bit about digital transformation today. We've got quite a big focus on this. We've been talking digital transformation for many, many years. And I think the journey is always about helping people understand why we want digital transformation, why businesses need to look at digital transformation, and really just what to understand around digital transformation. And so, like all good things, I suppose that's where I really want to start off today. I just want to start off at a bit of, let's first clear the lines as to when we talk digital transformation, what are we really talking about? What is this big term? Because it is a big term, and a lot of things get bundled into it, and a lot of things get thrown and represented as digital transformation. And I think that causes a little bit of the confusion and the chaos around this as well, and the uncertainty of it. So I just wanted to bring it back a little bit, and I just wanted to, let's unpack this term to start off with. So I think the first part is just understanding the first word of digital transformation, and that is really the word digital. So when we look at it from an Oxford Dictionary perspective, it's about relating to, using, or storing data or information in the form of digital signals expressed as a series of the digits, zeros and ones. And we all do or engage with something digital every single day of our lives, whether it's our cell phones, our devices that we're currently sitting on, thanks to Teams and GoToMeetings and all sorts of other technologies. We experience this digital concept daily, and if not by the minute and by the hour. So it really is about taking anything, information and data, and expressing it in a digital form. The second part of this definition is the word transformation. So transformation is a process by which one figure, expression, or function is converted into another one of similar value. So both these words stand alone. They stand in isolation, but what we really do from a digital transformation perspective is we bring them together, and we bring them into a relationship. So when we talk digital transformation, it's understanding that there's two different objects that we're combining into a bigger conversation. So I just want to unpack these definitions a little bit more and highlight some key important, I think, terms here. The one on the digital side is it's about using. It's one thing to store information, which we do. We store electronic information, but the second part is about how we use it as well. So it's not just about storing it, but about using it as well, and driving information. So information, again, is one of those words you can unpack it in so many ways, but it must have information in it. The second part of the transformation side, the key word there is about process. What are we transforming? We're transforming a process or an object or an item, but generally a process end to end. And what we're wanting to do by transforming it is convert it. If we're not converting it, if we're not changing its value, if we're not changing its output or its result or what it's going to look like at the end, are we really transforming it? And that's the one area that I think sometimes also just a little bit gets missed in this translation of digital transformation. It's taking a process and it's taking an area and it's about converting it and changing it and giving it an outcome or a result of value. And so really when we start to talk digital transformation, I really just want us to think of these two things: something electronic that we then want to convert and make its output be something of value. And it's really about a process of change. And so why do we want to do this? You know, it's okay, that's what digital transformation is, but why do we want to do it? And I think the first thing is, when we talk about a process, we also have to understand that it's not one thing, it's not one object, it's not one department, it's not one individual. A process generally spans across multiple teams, across multiple individuals, across multiple touch points, across multiple needs or requirements. So when we think about digital transformation and we think about that process and that conversion, what we have to understand is it's not a vertical, it's a horizontal change that is going to take place, and it's a horizontal change that is being transformed. And so sometimes when we look at a digital transformation world, we siloize it, we verticalize it, and we go, it's an IT problem. No, IT are going to be our enablers. IT are going to help us, but it's a horizontal focus. It's about across multiple teams, and it's across driving business value across multiple areas where a process is where we want to see digital transformation coming into play. And so it's quite a broad focus, and this is really where I want to unpack a lot of this with you today. So when we look at this, we have to understand why the need for it. So I think COVID has really answered this quite a lot for us. COVID has really made us had to sit up and go, oh, we need to be able to do things easily in this scenario. How do I carry on functioning? How do I carry on operating? How do I carry on my day-to-day business and my life in this lockdown situation or this isolated situation that we find ourselves in with the rest of the world? And so digital transformation has really been highlighted, and we've all had to deep dive into it. We suddenly got many teams experts, and you know, maybe the good thing of COVID is that we're going to come out as digital transformation gurus because we're all just going to be so entrenched in digital because it's just enabling so much for us. But there are some other reasons why digital transformation has become such a big focus point, and I just wanted to touch on some of these for today as to why business is looking at it. And I think one of the big things for business that's really happening is that in general, we have become a society of a right now culture. We want things, and we want things now. You know, you have a vision, you have a thought, this is what you want, this is what you want to achieve, or this is what you want to buy or you want to get. But you don't want to have to wait 10 days, or you don't want to have to wait 3 months. If you want it, you kind of want it now. And online delivery and e-commerce has seen this challenge quite a lot because it's one of those hurdles. You know, one of their objectives is always trying to get delivery quicker, almost instantaneous to a point, is like their utopia. And that's really just because the culture of consumers, the culture of us as a society, is we've become very much a right now culture. And so to be a right now culture, we really have to be able to do things fast, efficient, and quick. And really, that's where technology becomes a big enabler. Is it helps us to do things at scale and at volume to support this right now expectation. There's the globalization. One could argue that potentially we weren't so globalized. No, you know, our economies kind of did trade independently to a point. I think, if anything, COVID has definitely highlighted how integrated as economies and as a world that we are, how globally reliant we are on each other to share product and share supply chains and get things into our economies and drive our economies. So globalization has always been a big term, and when we're trying to globalize, again, technology becomes a big enabler here. You know, having a GoToMeeting right now and having this webinar talks to the fact that it doesn't matter where we are. Adele just quite nicely told us, you know, in France, they're having a beautiful day. And it's great to know that she's sitting there listening from France, and I'm sitting here in Johannesburg in South Africa. So it starts to just, it makes our position of where we are locally irrelevant, and technology starts to just clear that up for us and make it achievable. We've become social butterflies. Some of the memes that I'm loving at the moment is just that we've got certain. I used to be an expert on a certain subject, but now I'm suddenly an expert on COVID as well. And it's just because we so socially want to share. We so socially want to know what's going on in other people's lives. And I think it's great. I think it's a great thing about our human nature is that we want to be part of something. And because we're such social butterflies, we look a lot to social platforms like Twitter, like Facebook, like LinkedIn, to see what other people are doing and what other people are recommending and why they're recommending it. And we actually, and because of these social butterflies, our businesses have got to start to become a lot more attuned and a lot more reactive and a lot more aware of we also have such an informed customer, more now than we've ever had before, especially at this moment, because everyone's on a learning course. Everyone's busy learning something at the moment, and upskilling themselves, which is great. We're going to come out so smart. But this changes business. Business, you know, has to be aware of the fact that their customers are informed. Their customers have done a lot of research, a lot of homework. They've looked, they've explored, they've compared. And so when we become engaged with a more informed customer, we've got to be on our game as well. We've got to be able to respond quickly. We've got to be able to give them information that they're looking for quickly. And again, technology starts to enable in this space. And the other reason where technology really starts to come and why businesses are considering these changes, because suddenly our customers have a choice. Because of globalization, because we've got multi-competitors, not just locally, but internationally, that consumers can get from and other businesses can get from, suddenly there's choice. So we've got to be top of our game. We've got to be on the front foot if we really want to achieve the business and get the results that we want. So again, technology has to step in here and help enable us to provide choice and make sure that we are the choice of the customer and that they're not going to a competitor. So a lot of these subplots, these peripherals around what's happening in society, or what's really also impacting business, and why businesses are at that position where they've got to start changing and they've got to start looking at ways to embrace these changes that are driving their business results. And so that being said, we look a lot to digital transformation to support us on this. How do we as a business, what do we need to do? How do we get technology to enable us in those areas? What does that journey look like? And this is really where it gets wrapped up into that conversation of a digital transformation journey. And this is really the question that everyone's asking themselves: how do I do business digitally, and how do I embrace this? And so today I want to chat about three steps to consider, three things to consider when we are talking a digital transformation journey. And the first step that I really want to talk about is what do you want to achieve? It's easy. I can very quickly say, oh, we're gonna put something digital in your business. We're going to give everyone cell phones and they're going to process via a cell phone. Fantastic. But why? What value did it add? What did it change? Because remember, part of our definition of digital transformation is the word transform. We are taking a process and we are converting it into something of value. So it's easy to put something digital in, but did it transform anything? Did it drive any value? And so that's really, I think sometimes where this gets lost is we see the one side, which is the digital aspect, but we forget the second side, which is the transformation process. So a big question, I think, for anyone, if they want to start on the digital transformation journey, is to be very clear about what you want to achieve. Why do you want to achieve it? And what what does your success look like at the end? So when we think about it from a digital transformation, in my experience, there's generally 3 areas that this conversation happens in. One is we want to transform information, how we get information into the business, whether it's the absorbing of orders from customers electronically, from a B2B scenario, whether it is the integration of supplier orders coming in and doing automatic receipts and putaways into our warehouses, so that we can pass on to production later or on to delivery. It's about when we look at all the different areas of our business where information happens, and generally where information happens at scale or high volume, how do we transform that? How do we automate it? How do we improve it? So when we talk about information transformation, it's really about trying to drive efficiency and trying to improve and automate that process so that we can have a quicker turnaround time, which basically should result in competitive advantage, in the sense that the quicker I can get it to my customer, the quicker I can turn around my sale and my customer expectation and my delivery, the more success factor or the higher success factor I'm going to have. So one area that might want to put your lens through digital transformation is, what is your objective? Is your objective to do information transformation? It might not be. The other thing you might be wanting to look at is reinventing yourselves, or not necessarily inventing, but maybe adding on a new revenue stream or a new operating model into the business. And this is where we talk about operating model transformation. We see a lot, or I personally am seeing a lot of conversations nowadays where suddenly this shift is going that, you know, I don't have to sell my product. I can rent my product. And if I can rent my product, I can add a service fee onto that, and I can create recurring revenue. And it's a great business model. It's a really, really good business model, because when we look at operating model transformation, that's really what it's doing. It's about looking at our business and expanding our business and evolving our business into a new space. And so the likes of this for me, you know, especially if I think about it from the food and business beverage industry at the moment, one thing that's become quite pertinent is delivery straight to door. I mean, that's quite a big operating model shift. Is how do we change this traditional onset of how we deliver to our consumer or our customer, and how do we very quickly translate that into a new way of doing business and a new operating model? So we do have to think about using digital transformation to create new business models, and often it's a way for us to expedite this and do this quicker. And the third, and often the most importantly cited reason for digital transformation, and I do think it talks to the heart of the others, because underneath those, this is actually the reason why we're doing it, is it's about transforming our customer. It's our customer transformation. It's how we transform the experience our customer has with us, and it's really about driving that customer engagement and that customer experience so that we can drive a repeatable customer, a customer that's wanting to come back, a customer that is that influencer that's going to share it on social media and influence others. So at the heart of everything, digital transformation also talks to how we drive our customer experience and improve our customer experience. So it really does come down to a return on investment based on what the cost is versus what does that look like from a return on customer experience. And often when we put those two values against each other, yeah, the digital or the project cost might be fairly significant, or a high cost to the business, but the return on customer experience and the output and the value add that is going to bring at the end of the day outweighs or supports that investment. And so these two start to become a really important focus point on digital transformation. And so when we talk about planning a digital transformation journey, what we start to talk about is looking at the business, looking at it holistically, understanding where the business wants to improve based on the why we want to do what we want to do, and then understanding all the different touch points along that process where we want to bring in technology to help us transform. and help us improve. And so when we look at this from a journey perspective, there are certain areas where we're going to say we need to bring in digital enablement. There are going to be other areas where we say, oh, we want to explore with something new. You know, this area, it's not really something in the market that can maybe provide this. Maybe we need to explore developing or finding or creating a digital solution of something, or potentially we want to reinvent. We completely want to disrupt. You know, a lot of conversation at the moment is coming out about synthesized DNA. And synthesized DNA really starts to look at our DNA and what it affects us and what it doesn't, and our history and our genealogy. And there's so many, to the point that we're using it for health reasons, to also understand our health paths and how to protect ourselves as individuals. But to the point that we're also starting to see it come into the food conversation, eating the right foods based on our DNA and what that has. And so you know, maybe part of that becomes that reinvention, that disruption, is about how as a supplier and how as a food provider, how do I take that concept and how do I introduce that into the consumer and help them choose the right food choice based on a particular DNA profile or DNA needs and requirements. So when we talk digital transformation, it's often made up of different things. So digital enablement means, you know what, maybe I just need to bring a scanner in and we need to just start scanning documentation. That's just enabling it, and it's introducing it. But then disruption means we're completely going to change it or completely think of something new. And that often comes when we're looking at those new business models. So that's our first areas. Why do we want to do it? Let's understand it as a business. It is a horizontal thing, not a vertical approach. Let's understand what we want to do and what we want to drive and where we want the value to come in. And then the second thing is, let's understand if we're ready for this. In some cases, we don't have a choice. We've got no choice but to become ready for it. But it's important that we walk in and we step into understanding what readiness means. And so there's a very big concept and a very important consideration to take into place is, from a digital aspect, how ready are we? Are we digital natives or are we digital immigrants? And immigrants and natives, we can argue these points as much as we like. The reality is that they're there. Some of us did not grow up from day one with technology in front of us, and a lot of individuals did. And individuals that from day one that they've stepped foot on this planet, all they've known is technology in their space, they respond differently, their behavior is different, they react different, and adoption happens differently. So for a lot of businesses, they are digital native businesses and some are digital immigrants. And it's quite interesting because it's the digital immigrants that are often having to have the conversation of doing a digital transformation journey. Digital natives actually don't even know why this question's there. What do we mean we need a digital transformation journey or we need a digital transformation strategy? And the reason they struggle with that is because inherently their whole business is digital. So a quick example of this, let's use the likes of, I suppose, a Netflix. Netflix, their whole business is digital. There's not a single part of Netflix that isn't digital. So for them, it's in their ethos, it's in their culture, it's in everything that they do is digital. So a digital transformation journey is potentially a difficult conversation for them because they are just so digitally native. It's inherent in everything that they do and how the business was created and evolved. Where versus a company that has been around for many, many years, 40, 50 years onwards, even 30 years, technology was not at the rates or the availability that it was. And so we've had to immigrate into a digital mindset. And for a lot of businesses, they still haven't finished that immigration yet. They're still trying to get to grips and they're still trying to change the business and they're still trying to see how to adopt digital into their world. And this is where digital transformation conversation is really the biggest topic point, because it's those businesses that have got to do this transformation. So one important thing to understand or consider when we talk digital transformation is just that it is an enabler to business. It's really there to try and help business improve. It's there to try and help business be better and faster at what they do. And where the line often gets blurred is when we talk things like digital transformation. They're obviously often talked with other technologies. And so the blurring becomes digital transformation is artificial intelligence. No. When we talk about APIs, artificial intelligence, AI, bots being digital citizens that are online and always available there to ask questions and talk. IoT, integrating of machines into services so that we can take information and then analyze it. Virtual reality, augmented reality, this cloud, taking everything up into the cloud and onto Azure and onto Amazon and all those things. All of this is tools, they're enablers. In their own right, they support a digital journey. They support digital transformation. They are not digital transformation. They're enablers of digital transformation. And I think this is sometimes where it gets a little bit lost. People feel that in order to do digital transformation, well, they have to have AI. No, if it's not relevant, if it's not going to add the value, if it's not going to help transform, you don't need artificial intelligence. However, if it's going to allow us to do something quickly because we've got to chunk large amounts of data and we've got to work through quick algorithms at a faster rate than any human can process, then we need artificial intelligence to be able to drive that value. So each one of these tools is very powerful and they are great enablers to digital transformation. And a digital transformation process could have all of these. It could have some of them. It could just use one of these areas. And I think that's just one area I just really wanted to highlight today, is that it's about enabling this process and using these tools to drive transformation. The third area is about what information do you really, really need? There is so much of it. There is so much of it. And I think where this becomes really, really interesting is we are in the world of Industry 4.0. A lot of people are already talking about Industry 5, and we're not even ready or there yet, but it's coming, and we're still trying to get to grips with Industry 4.0. And I think with Industry 4.0, what we talk about a lot here is looking at our production facilities and our factory floors, and everyone goes, we must connect our machines. We must get them talking to each other or talking up into services, and we must start collecting that data. And we go back to point number one as to why. Why do we need to connect the data? What difference is it gonna make? What decision is it gonna change? What value is it gonna bring? And so, because when we talk about Industry 4.0 and we talk about sensorization and IoT and Internet of Things and taking information from machines, there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information it can share. If I just take a fridge, for example, it can tell me temperature, it can tell me light, it can tell me energy consumption, it can tell me all sorts of different things. There's lots of information I can pull from it, but which one's going to be of value? What's going to be of importance? And what's going to help make us answer point number one as to why do we need to do this? What is the value that it's going to bring? And so it's really, really a great area where we see a lot of improvement, because once we understand what it can achieve and how we can automate and how it can drive efficiency, we can really then start to focus on the right areas and the right ways to digitalize our shop floor. So we have to first do that shop floor walkthrough. We have to understand what our equipment looks like, what our equipment's capable of. If it doesn't have sensors, if it doesn't have PLCs, if it doesn't have a way for us to communicate, what can we do, or what devices can we bring in to help it communicate? And then it's about understanding, once we've got the devices, what the rest of that ecosystem looks like. Where is that information going to go to? Where is it going to be analyzed? How does it need to be transformed? Because remember, it's digital, so it's ones and zeros. How do we transform it into something of value? And how do we represent that value? How do we represent that value to business? How do we represent that value to individuals so that they can make decisions out of that, or they can change out of that, or we can improve out of that. So digitalizing our shop floor is really, it's an important step where I encourage a lot of people to get that expert in. walk through it, understand what your current capabilities are, and then from that, plan how you want to achieve it. Again, making sure you're constantly realigning back to that point number one as to why. The other thing to be very mindful of is data value. Garbage in, garbage out. Same rules apply as they always ever have in digital transformation. If we're just giving garbage information, we are not really going to see value out of it. And I think this is where often too much information gets shared and we see this result happening. So it's be very mindful of the data, be very conscious of the data that you're collecting, be very conscious of why you want to collect it, and make sure that you're collecting the right information, and then put it through the right BI tools, put it through the right analytics tools, and if need be, put it through that artificial intelligence as well. Artificial intelligence is very, very good at crunching numbers at a speed that we often need to see in certain processes, not all. But again, if our data that we're passing it is irrelevant or of no value or rubbish or garbage, guess what the artificial intelligence is going to do? It's going to spit out garbage. So I think we've got to be very conscious of when we understand digitalization in our factories and our shop floors, we've got to understand the value of that data as well. And so just to kind of bring it all back together, just some, I suppose, areas that I just wanted to highlight from a cautionary perspective. It is a big concept. There's a lot going into digital transformation. Our ebook is available. I'm pretty sure it will be sent out maybe with a link of this email or it's otherwise on our website, but it's really just about helping you understand what to consider from a technology and all the different steps that I've talked about today. And just help you plan for your digital transformation and just give you some insight into going into that. But one thing I want to just bring to the fore is don't get caught up. It's very quick to get caught up in the wrong reasons or the wrong focus of digital transformation. One is it's not a quick fix. If you are using digital transformation to solve a problem, you have to be mindful that by bringing in digital, making it digital, you're about to make the problem worse. Because it's not necessarily always going to fix a problem. Sometimes it's going to add to a problem. So be very careful if we're bringing it in to fix a problem, we should be fixing a process as well. Because if the process or the basics are wrong to start with, technology is just going to exacerbate that and make it even bigger. So just be careful about thinking it's just it's a quick fix. It's not a one size fits all. Every business has a different need. Every business has a different value that they're trying to achieve out of this. We cannot just repeat and repeat and repeat. Yeah, we can repeat with hardware. We can use the same sensors. Yes, we can use the same enablers. We can use AI to solve the problem. But the way we do it for each business is different. It is not a one-size-fits-all approach. You really have to look at it through your business lens and your business needs and your business requirements and make sure that we apply it in that route and in that style. Because we do want to make sure that we're not going to add to the dysfunction. We want to add that value. We want to improve that process. Number two is it's a mindset. Technology is digital transformation is a mindset change. It's really about looking at everything and saying, how do I digitize this and make sure that when I do, that it's going to add value. And this is where part of our human behavior comes a little bit into play. Because we fear technology. We fear the movies that we've seen that is going to replace us. We fear our jobs being taken over by robots and robots ruling the world one day. We fear that technology makes us look stupid. And I sometimes think this is our hardest thing we've got to get over. Technology is smarter than us. It is. It can do maths quicker than us. Doesn't mean I still can't do maths and I can't do maths well. Of course I can. I just can't do it at the rate that a computer can. And so all it's trying to do is it's trying to do the heavy lifting for us. All it's trying to do is trying to get the answer for us quicker so that I can then do something with it, because that's really why we're trying to calculate in the first place. We want to get a result so that we can do something with the results. And so we've got to kind of get over that fear or that mindset change that technology is replacing, and we really have to trust that technology is there to enable and help us get to a result and outcome quicker, and not actually it's actually trying to make us look smarter, because it does. It has that potential to make us look smarter and be smarter. And it's also about transforming behavior. It's about transforming at ways that we do things and improving the ways we do things. It's always an interesting one for me, because I can often walk into a customer and we can ask about their pain points. And often when you actually walk through a business, you walk through a production facility, and you see how much manual processing happens, or manual capturing happens. And when you ask potentially why it hasn't been digitized, it's just, but we've always done it this way, or the fear of the behavior is there. It's like, oh, but it won't be much quicker. Actually, it will, and it will free up the individual to focus on other areas, or focus in other risk areas, and improve in other processes. But we tend to get stuck in a behavior pattern, and so it is there to also try and help us transform behavior. So we have to be prepared for a mindset change. Bringing in digital transformation, we have to be prepared. Everyone walked into online teams, online meetings, the digital world of COVID, fearful that we're going to lose our identity, fearful that we're going to lose our human connection with people because we suddenly can't interact. And that's why I think we love things like Teams and Zoom, because they've helped us realize that we can, and we can survive in this world, and we don't actually have to give up our individual selves. So prepare yourselves for that mindset change. And so really, I just want to leave you with a thought of, you don't have to go the digital transformation route. Maybe it's not suitable for you. Very, very unlikely. A lot of people fear it because of the cost. It might be costly depending to what length or to what depth you need to digitize certain parts of your processes and transform them. So you're walking in, it's not a cheap exercise potentially, but one has to ask yourself, if you don't do it, if you don't take that cost on, what's the cost not to do it? And what's the potential as a business you're going to lose out on, and potentially find yourselves in a very different situation. And so I hope I've given some insights and some thoughts around planning for a digital transformation world. Linda, I suppose I'll hand over to you and see if there's any questions.
Absolutely, Deirdre. I've got notes and notes and more notes, and they're all on paper. They're not digital. I know that's that's already a non-conformance as far as our discussion is concerned. But yeah. So I have to say, I'm having this conversation with you on a smartphone. My smartwatch has told me how many steps I've done today. Not enough, by the way. It also tells me when I have to drink water, which is really good. And I do order my coffee online. So I've kind of engaged with this digital age. And I suppose the thing that I really am very proud of is that we have a digital business. So although I have to still ask my kids how to switch on the video machine from time to time, there are things that I think that I've kind of engaged with. That was fascinating, and I think it really puts a lot of things into perspective when it comes to companies embarking on this journey. And I think that COVID has actually, given us a real opportunity, and we've seen how some businesses have been very agile and have responded very quickly. I'm just thinking of Net Florist. Literally overnight, Net Florist were delivering not only flowers, but because they couldn't, but they were delivering food. And yep. I think that agility is something that the digital space gives us. I like the word that you used, survive. I'd like to suggest that a digital transformation can take us from survival to thriving. I mean, it can really, really make a big difference in a business. You spoke about the fact that, a company can reinvent themselves. And I think those are definitely opportunities. You spoke about the risk factor, but I think we really need to look at this as an opportunity rather than just a risk.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to ask you a couple of specific questions, if I may. So I can see, given the understanding that we have of CISPRO's business, you're very involved in a company when it comes to an ERP solution. our last conversation, we spoke about traceability, you know, and you spoke about planning so that customers, you know, when to you're going to receive orders, or, you know, as customers receive orders, they go into a proper planning system. I would like to talk to you a little bit about the support systems within an organization, because to me that's kind of like the core business process. You know, at the end of the day, a manufacturing business in the food industry is there to get raw materials, process them, create a product, a series of products, and deliver those to their customers on time and in full. That to me would be the core business process. I'm sure that many of the people that are listening today are involved in some of the support systems. For example, the food safety manager, you know, considering the pandemic, the health and safety manager. So I just wanted to chat to you a little bit about digital transformation within those areas. Having audited food safety management systems for a large part of my career, I'm always appalled at the amount of paper that goes into those processes. And, you know, we've got to provide evidence during an audit, but have you had any experience with assisting companies to transform those support systems and integrate them with the core business process in order to just become so much more efficient and effective at what they're doing?
For sure. So I think, you know, it's particularly in that area. So when we talk about a support system, you know, those touch points of, especially around the safety, come in at so many different parts of a process. You know, safety generally is not just there in the beginning, and it's not just there at the end, it's there throughout as well. And the trick with that is, if you think about a production facility, let's just think of that for a moment, it's big. To walk from one end to another end of a production plant can sometimes be a good, you know, 10-minute walk. In some cases, one of our clients we were talking to last week, actually, you need a golf cart actually to get from one end to the other. And the reality of that is great. So there are so many moving parts in that. And then we have potentially one safety officer or one safety system to manage it all. And so we have to look at ways to digitize that, because we have to make it ways that we can scale and really have eyes on everything. And that's where I suppose a digital enablement parts of this come into play. So we see things like in certain areas we use computer visioning, and computer visioning tells us, and we teach it to look for anomalies, and it can highlight anomalies and send alerts and tell us to, you know, be quite reactive and proactive. In other areas we look at ways that we scan and we check where staff have been. So interesting enough, one of our partners has done just this, is that, you know, with going into COVID and some of the regulations, you have to know where a staff member's have been all the time. So in case they have COVID, you want to know what your business exposure is, so that you can quickly rectify that. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen stores, shops close. You know, you get the post that suddenly, oh, that shop's closed. Why? Because an individual had COVID. So without being able to, you know, we talk about tracking and traceability at a food level so much, and now what we've got to start seeing is a tracking of individuals, and start applying that to our employees. And this really is, I think, where safety becomes quite a big thing, because I think this world is about to evolve quite a lot, because I think the way we look at safety and the touch points and the areas that we've got to look at it definitely is going to require a lot of digital assistance and support for us to really do it effectively.
Yes, and I have to say I'm happy about that, because I think particularly, you know, in the food industry, safety of our employees has often been a neglected component of our management systems and our risk systems. You know, we've spent a lot of time and effort in the last 10 years focusing on food safety, and I'm not saying that that's not important, but in many cases we cannot achieve our excellent results without our people, which means we have to protect them, and I think COVID has definitely taught us some lessons in that respect. The other area I know, which is a real pain point for many food manufacturers, And that is supplier control, supplier quality assurance processes. And I'm sure this is an area where you've been involved in digitizing. We unfortunately are still in a world where there's a 30-page questionnaire that goes from one company to another company to ask them to, make certain declarations and certifications, and it's just a paper monster. And I've seen there's nothing wrong with the questionnaire, but the problem is that that information is never reviewed, the data is never interrogated, and so we actually really never know what's happening with our suppliers first level and definitely not second level. So to me, that would be an ideal opportunity, to digitize supplier quality assurance programs, get suppliers to upload information, capture information that again that data can then be scrutinized and analyzed so that we can manage exceptions rather than, spending a lot of time and effort or spending no time and effort, looking at the data that we've collected.
For sure. It's unfortunately in that regard, it's that age-old problem of doing it for the sake of doing it, and not doing it because it actually has any value. I think we lose sight of the value, put it that way. The value's there. We need the regulations. We should be sharing the information. But we've gotten into a habit of just doing it because, well, it needs to be done, and not actually doing it to get insight out of it. And I think, yeah, it definitely leaves room for being improved and streamlined so that we can do that process quicker. But it requires collaboration, and I think this is the hardest part in a digital world, is when we start talking about external supply chain collaboration, is it comes with a big element of trust. And when we've got a big element of trust, you need a really strong business relationship as well. And technology, to a point, actually, I think supports this in the sense that it actually protects the concern around trust here, because we can be selective of what information to share and how to share it. And so that's where technologies like blockchain and other concepts really come to the fore, because they try and help support that trust concern across organizations or other organizations trying to come into that process. And so I think the conversation will definitely be had more around that to drive and automate that a lot more.
Absolutely, and I think, as you're saying, the barrier there is the potential or the resistance to collaborate, which is really sad, because we're, if I just take the amount of time that the average food safety manager would spend completing those documents and sending those documents to supplier, and the level of repetition that is happening within the country, the same ingredients supplied to 5 different customers, each customer has their own supplier evaluation form. It just seems to be ludicrous, and I almost question whether it's becoming a risk to food safety, because we're spending time filling out paperwork instead of monitoring the safety of our products. The other area is cleaning checklists, and I think, when it comes to the COVID-19 process, we now got this screening checklist that we have to complete every day, and I think, where there's I always worry about tick infested checklists, because it's just tick, tick, tick for the sake of ticking something. We need the information, but we need to be able to manage the exceptions. And I'm really hoping that, going forward, that is really an opportunity to digitize, where we can quickly capture information and then again manage exceptions, as opposed to having files and files of paper that's never even reviewed, by supervisors.
For sure. And so I support you on the tick exercise. It makes me think of a scenario where, great, I'm the person responsible for the tick list, and I get everything tick, 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 ticked. And a week later, we're in a crisis because something happened, and we're trying to manage that crisis, and we unpack the scenario, and we look at the process, and we go, how did this happen as a business, or how did this happen or pass? And we go back to the source of where the tick list happened, and there it is. It's the tick there, and everyone goes, but how did we miss this? I said, well, it's on paper. One thing that potentially was forgotten in this process is that when a certain tick or a certain thing gets put on that certain block, that individual needs to know that that's important and needs to communicate it if we're doing it manually. When we digitize things, we don't have to wait on that reliance. We don't have to wait on someone remembering to do that. We can notify that automatically, and we can notify the right level of person to pay attention to it instantly, rather than having to find ourselves doing a root cause analysis a week later or a month later and try and unpack where something went wrong. And that's always the risk we have. The risk we have when we start to go into these manual situations is, again, why are we doing it? What's the importance of doing this? And let's make sure that we don't lose sight of that and just get caught up in paperwork or detail.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, last question, Dedrick. I'd love to chat to you about this for a lot longer, but I know your time's limited. Are you seeing integration of management systems? So what I mean by that is, you mentioned that processes are horizontal. I agree completely. But I'm now referring to the linkages and the deliberate integration between these support management systems. So I think another thing that COVID has taught us is that previously in a food company, we would have had a food safety person and we would have had a health and safety person, perhaps. In some cases, they have the same hats, but in most cases, it's normally 2 people or it's 2 consultants. What COVID has taught us is that we have to collaborate between those 2 departments. In a food company, we wash our hands to protect our product. Now, because of COVID-19, we wash our hands to protect our employees. Now, we obviously don't want to have 2 hand washing policies. We want to have one that will meet both sets of requirements. So we have integration of these systems, where instead of using 2 checklists, we can actually use 1 checklist. Are you seeing this as a trend within the food industry, where there is a deliberate intention to integrate these systems to make it more effective and to manage cumulative risk rather than looking at each risk individually?
So I can honestly, I don't think it's happening at the level maybe that it should be happening. It is happening though. So it is happening in certain businesses and conversations. Again, I think it talks to the maturity of the organization, not necessarily about not wanting to collaborate, but sometimes it's not knowing how to collaborate. And I think that often is where the process gets sidelined or hindered. It's easier sometimes just to keep it in its little silo, because then we don't cause disruption. So yeah, it does happen. It is happening, and definitely from a systems integration, sharing of information is becoming a lot more topical, but not at the rates that it really should be or could be to add true value.
Okay, so that's definitely an area that we all need to start talking about more, because I did an audit once and there were 3 checklists for 1 forklift, 1 for health and safety, 1 for maintenance, and 1 for food safety. And at that point, I did tell the company that I thought that they completely lost their marbles and they should reevaluate the business process. So I'm on your side. Let's talk about that one more. Deirdre, it's always fascinating talking to you. I think I am a digital immigrant, so I definitely need to work a little bit more on sort of, taking on this whole digital approach. Even though I am involved in a digital business, there are still certain aspects that scare me because of my birth date starting with a 6. But I'm getting there. I'm getting there. So thank you so much, and I look forward to us having more conversations about specific areas of digital transformation that can transform the food industry and take us from survival to thriving. Thanks so much for your time, Dedra, and I look forward to our next chat.
Oh, Linda, absolute pleasure as always. Once again, I apologize. I know we had to reschedule, and I appreciate everyone making the time, but it's always worth it, and always so great chatting to you guys and being on a food focus session. And yeah, having our chats. I really do appreciate it as well. Thank you.
Great. Have a good Thursday, everybody, and look forward to the next webinar Wednesday. Thanks, Deirdre. Over and out.
Thanks, everyone. Keep safe.
Thank you, everybody. Have an awesome day and be safe and be blessed. Until next Wednesday. Bye-bye.